True Crime Grapevine fans. It's me, Patty Lee, your host here on the True Crime Grapevine. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, thank you. Nice to see you again. For the newbies, what is this channel? This is a channel if you are interested in true crime and you don't have, there's too much crime and not enough time. So if you don't have time to listen to all the YouTubes and keep up with every single article that comes out about crime, you can count on me to help you keep up with everything that's going on. So this week, this episode 43 is covering everything that has happened on the most of the things, I should say, not everything that has happened, everything that is being talked about the most from the grapevine, the biggest, juiciest stories, cases, that happened between March 1st, because my last upload was February 28th, until yesterday, March 9th. So I'm taping this on March 10th, so if anything's happening right now, it'll be in next week's episode. So I always pair all my crime episodes with a drink, and today we're having a lovely margarita. Why, you ask? Our first case comes from a unfortunate case from Mexico, that Americans were kidnapped and 2 were killed. Horrible. So if you're drinking, if you're not drinking, that's fine. If you're drinking, go ahead. You're gonna need a strong margarita to deal with these cases this week. I've got 7 cases for you. We're going to talk about that, the Americans that were kidnapped and killed in Mexico. We're going to talk about a Hong Kong case in which a model influencer was unalived by her in-laws, that she, to all outside eyes, it looked like they had a great amicable relationship. The Delphi case has an interesting cold case connection. The Stephenson's murders in Kentucky, we're going to be talking about that. The Idaho4 case. We've got last week the warrant for searching, like what they were looking for in the car on Brian in his house in Pennsylvania, was released, as well as the receipts. Very interesting. Case 5 is the burn after reading letter. In Florida, the Petito Schmidt family is suing for causing emotional damage for the Laundries, and they want the letter that Roberta gave Brian at some time. We'll be talking about that. The Vallow-Daybell case, big news there. We'll talk about the severing. We'll talk about Lori's trial coming in April soon, and some decisions that are made that might impede covering the case. And last, we're going to talk about the Murdaugh murder verdict and the sentencing, and sort of get into what it means for the good old boy network in South Cackalack. All right, that is what is on the menu, as it were, today, episode 43. Let's get into it. Case uno, number 1. So really sad case. 4 Americans went in the end of February to, this is where the dyslexia is going to come in, people, Matamoros, Mexico, which is right over the border from Brownsville, Texas. There's an international bridge, you cross it, and then you're into, that's where you go into this, Matamoros, Mexico. Now, why were they going there? Spring break time? Not exactly. Tay was interested in getting some plastic surgery, a little tummy tuck, and she went with 3 of her closest childhood friends. They were all from South Carolina. They went in this van. It was a rental van. They got it from North Carolina, which led to a little, people were reporting that it was from North Carolina and not reporting who was in the van at first. Tay, Eric, Shaid, and Zendel, they all went in this van from South Carolina They entered Mexico in Brownsville, Texas, across this international bridge. It was, I believe, February 28th or the end of February. Maybe it was the 25th. Immediately, their van is surrounded. There's videotape. It is horrible. There's gunfire. They are pulled bodily from their van and put into a white pickup. This is all on video. A bystander from the city is also shot and does die. Immediately, it looks as if Zindel and Shaid are shot and killed right there. Eric and Tay are removed. Now, what we know, so at first, the U.S. State Department gets involved immediately. They offer $50,000 for the safe return of these Americans. The FBI gets involved. The governor and police in Matamoros get involved. Let me show you where this is on the map. So as you can see, I put a little dot here. Matamoros is right, if you go all the way down Texas to the tip, it's right there. And then there's Brownsville, Texas, and it's immediately across the border. So it's not like they thought that it would be dangerous to drive far into Mexico. A lot of people go right over the border. Now it is on the U.S. Department's level 4 for danger. Like, they recommend you do not visit there. But everything is so expensive, as we all know, in America, getting more so every day. There, inflation of costs of food, gas, and, you know, the medical stuff is, you know, pharmacy. A lot of people go over the border to get pharmaceuticals because they're over the counter in Mexico. They're not as regulated. Also surgeries like this. So it isn't unheard of that people do this. It's actually very common. Yes, it's level 4, but they weren't going to be partying. They weren't involved in the drug trade. They were just going quickly to have this surgery done. The 3 friends were staying with Tay, and they figured they'd be in, they'd be out, right over the border. Now, just to go back a second, Zindel Brown was worried, and he spoke to his sister, and he was saying, I don't know. It seems like it could be violent. Tay's mom, I believe, also had expressed some issues. But, you know, look, she's with 3 guy friends. It seemed they weren't going very far in. Anyway, so their van was surrounded. This is the van up here. As you can see, they were pulled out, put into a white pickup truck. What we found out later was that it was reported Tuesday. I think they had been found over the weekend, but it was reported Tuesday that Tay and Eric were found in separate locations because the gang people had split them up. Apparently, they think that the gang people thought that they were traffickers and involved in the trade. And Matamoros is one of the reasons it's so violent right now, especially, is there was one gang that had control of the area, but that gang lord, the leader, was unalived, I believe, and so the power structure was, there was a power struggle there with the gangs. So basically, it's like the Wild Wild West, and these people just, I don't know why they thought maybe a white van from the States was supposed to be carrying people. I don't know why they thought this. But this is just the working theory right now. I'm sure the Mexican authorities don't want Americans even more scared to go down there. So, that's our next case. So what can we learn from this? So we have 2 people who are alive. Let me go back to who it is. So Tay and Eric Williams, the first 2 here, they are still alive. Tay actually wasn't injured. I don't know, maybe if she was very compliant and the others maybe even said something or fought. Not that I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out why she was not injured at all. Eric was shot in the leg. He is recovering in Brownsville. Both of them were picked up in ambulances and taken to Brownsville. I'm assuming maybe both needed, like they were dehydrated. It just sounds horrific. Shaid and Zindel were killed right there at the thing. So what can we learn from this? Before you go to Mexico for any reason, do check if it is an area. If it's a level 4, I really wouldn't go. I don't think it's worth it. It's not worth your life. We don't know why this happened. That's like, I always think, what can we learn from this? It is unfortunate because Mexico is a beautiful country. The people are beautiful people. I mean, most Mexican, citizens are great. Again, it's just like one of those things where a few ruin the bunch. It's unfortunate. It is spring break time. If you are going to Mexico, stay, especially if you're like in a resort, stay in the resort. Even if it's not a level 4, whatever the level is, it's a good idea to stay on the resort and enjoy it. Go there, enjoy it. Don't go adventuring to get the local scene, and don't go there for any nefarious purposes. Yeah, it's not the time. All right, so that is very sad. Case number 2. You're not gonna believe this. Case number 2 is the case of Abby Choi, I believe is how you say it. She is a Hong Kong influencer, or was, unfortunately. She was murdered and dismembered. Now they think it was, allegedly it was her ex-husband and in-laws. I say allegedly with air quotes because, as you can see, here she is, 28 years old, absolutely beautiful. If you read Crazy Rich Asians, there is a character who is called, I think I wrote it, the book is called Crazy Rich Asians. There's 3 books in the series by Kevin Kwan. Highly recommend it. You may have heard of the movie Crazy Rich Asians, but the books are fabulous, and there's 3 of them. Highly recommend those books. So she was reported missing February 21st. She went to pick up, it had to do with picking up her children at school. She had 4 children, 2 by her first husband. The first husband's name is Andrew. And 2 by her second husband, but I guess they had a ceremony, but they didn't make it legal. I don't know. She herself was wealthy. And like I said, she reminded me of this character in Crazy Rich Asians. I think the character, though, was a Singapore woman, but she was like a model and an influencer and from a super, super rich family. That is Abby Choi. Abby Choi knew how to dress. She had wealth from an early age. She really enjoyed fashion. She went to the Paris fashions. She was in French Vogue. She would be sitting first in the runway shows. I mean, fabulous life. Look at her, very beautiful. 4 beautiful kids, 2 with her first husband, and then she had 2. I think they were 10 and 6 or 10 and 8. We're not sure about the other 2's ages. Apparently in Hong Kong, if you are very, very wealthy, you would have drivers for your kids. You could be kidnapped, I guess, and held for ransom, which is what they thought happened on February 21st. She was supposed to be picking up her children. She never showed up. Now, I think I got this story from Gisela K on Grizzly True Crime. She explained this very well. She had 2 different cars going to school to get her 2 children, for 4 children with 2 different men. One of her drivers of the second, her chauffeur, had quit, and she hired Andrew, her ex's brother, to drive. And I believe that was the car she got into, and she was going to school to pick up her children. She was reported her children were not picked up. The school called. She was missing. So as you can see, the other picture here, besides her beautiful face, is a landfill. Because quickly what unraveled was that it was the car that her brother-in-law was driving, into which she got in and never came to the school to pick up her kid. Those two children, at first they thought maybe it was a ransom, but then the police went to figure things out, and they ended up in this house that her ex-in-laws had rented specifically as a kill house. And by that I mean, if you've watched Scandal, and if you remember the character Puck, he had a kill kit that included like thick plastic sheeting to put over everything so as not to make a mess when you unalive somebody. They had plastic sheeting in this apartment. There was found to be a meat grinder and a cutter slicer and long plastic raincoats, because one does not want, and gloves and a mask, because one does not want to get dirty when one is unaliving somebody. And then when the police found this little kill nest rented by the family, her ex-in-laws, they found that on the stove there were 2 pots. One, they looked like big soup pots, boiling away, as one does when one makes soup, but one usually doesn't include the ingredients of, a skull and ribs, and upstairs, I believe they found a refrigerator that had her legs in it, but they didn't find her whole entire body. So I believe they had seen that there were people carrying bags. So that is the picture there, is as we saw in Quentin Simon's case and in the case of the missing mom in California who went into the high-rise and her dog was found wandering. They end up looking in these landfills. It is very hard, though, to find, as you can see. So they haven't found the rest of her body as far as I know. The Hello Magazine quote here that I have is that the suspects planned, this is what the police have said, that the suspects planned her murder for weeks, rented this suburban apartment to cut up her body. Witnesses reported seeing people carrying out garbage bags. Another interesting fact here, here's Alex Kwong, who was arrested for murdering and dismembering his ex-wife. They got married when they were 18. So when we say, what can we learn from this? Well, number one, especially if you're a rich socialite, maybe just don't get married as soon as you possibly can at 18. But it sounded like maybe that was one of her first acts of independence. So here's to independence. You don't make the best choices. There's a lot of research in sociology about, now some marriages, my mother-in-law and father-in-law for one, they met in high school, they stayed married over 50 years. Most, though, we find that the brain isn't done until you're 26. So what you like when you're 18 is not going to be the same thing that you're drawn to after your brain is fully formed and matured and the frontal lobe has been fully myelinated after around 26. Not just physically myelinated, but you've been using it, hopefully, to make critical decisions. And you start to be able, your executive functioning matures and you can think about possibilities in the future, like what I'm doing now. Could possibly happen. So I don't know what could possibly happen if you're an 18-year-old very wealthy socialite who marries into a regular sort of family, and you end up supporting that family for the years that you're married until you divorce around 2016. You have 2 kids with that family, but you continue to support them financially. In fact, what we find out is so I thought it was very interesting. The motive here is from 3 different sources, from Inside Edition and then CBS Take, which I always think as an past academic and as someone who thinks they're a critical thinker, I always consider the source. Does it match the evidence that we know? Does it sound statistically probable, possible? Probable is a better way to critically think. And then I consider that source, especially once you find out more, if you vetted that source. And I used to consider all the major news sources, they had to be, they'd have 3 confirmed sources before they report things. And seems to have gone by the wayside, speaking of 2016. We've gotten less and less it's more like yellow journalism now, almost everything. So it is hard. And if you look at the motive, so Inside Edition says, Chow, a mother of 4, had recently been arguing with her former family members over money and her plan to sell a multi-million-dollar luxury apartment where some of her former relatives had lived, the police said. Now that was from Inside Edition. So let's think about this. This girl who married into this family when she was 18, she is very wealthy, helps them out even after they get divorced, continues to help them, but it sounded like she got married and maybe wasn't, going to continue that forever, as one cannot. Maybe the remarriage, even if it was just a ceremonial remarriage, now she's got 2 little kids, maybe she was, starting to think, I really can't support my exes forever. So now CBS News Online on March 3rd reported that Choi had financial disputes involving tens of millions of Hong Kong dollars, millions of dollars like American, with her ex-husband and his family. Think about the difference in that. She had financial disputes, police said earlier, adding that some people were unhappy with how Choi handled her finances. And I bolded that. You can see right here. No, that CBS News Online makes me want to drink. Have a sip. If you read that, it intimates that, was she doing something wrong? It sounds like maybe she had problems with lots of people because she had financial disputes. And then at the end of the sentence it says, with her ex-husband and his family. That reads a little bit differently. It's not like wrong, but think of, in psychology, we call that a valence. A valence, like you put a valence over a window. A valence is something that is over something that maybe could obscure or affect how you see it. The valence there sounds like some people were unhappy. No, she had property and she had been basically supporting these people. She gave the brother who ended up kidnapping her and killing her in the car, had that car because she offered him a job as a chauffeur. So I don't know if that's them. They weren't just unhappy. She was giving them a lifestyle to which they had become accustomed and apparently was unable to continue that or was unwilling to continue that. So what I liked best was, and it comes from a source that I wouldn't normally think, it was called ski something. It was like sports ski, Pop News Online, but this is maybe because they have no skin in the game. They reported it. The case of Abby Choi's murder was reportedly a monetary dispute over $12 million worth of property. Now let's put that with the idea that this was a multi-million-dollar luxury apartment where some of her former relatives are living. Basically, she's like, I gotta sell. I can't continue. I mean, I know you love living there. Probably her in-laws, I'm guessing, because we find out that, that's who was arrested. So there are 7 people so far arrested in Abby's unaliving and dismemberment. Andrew, as we saw her, that's him in Happier Times. Apparently, and I don't know if it's just Hong Kong or China, but they allow you some sense of anonymity when you get arrested. It was Alex, his brother Andrew, his father's mistress, I don't know, maybe she was getting kicked out, his mother. Only the men were charged with murder. The women are charged with like helping, aiding and abetting, not as serious of a charge. And then there was this Lamb guy who owned a yacht who was helping. Oh, Andrew, if you notice, I don't know if you can tell, he was picked up at a pier. A pier where there was a yacht waiting for him, where he had $50,000 in cash, Hong Kong cash, and $4 million Hong Kong value of watches, luxury watches, and he was leaving the country because, as one does. That was after it was discovered, that this place had been rented by his family and what they found there. So his basically entire family, as well as the yacht operator, a woman who is 29, the same age as both Alex and Abby, who seems to be connected to the yacht operator and apparently friends with Alex, so she seems to be the go-between. She ran to mainland China, which is not too far away, but she was arrested and brought back. So 7 people, all of his family, his dad's mistress, apparently his girlfriend maybe, or a girl who was a friend, and then she got this yacht operator. All of them now arrested. So we'll keep up with that. But again, what can we learn from this? Number one, if you're really rich and well off, maybe wait a little bit until you get married. And maybe, and maybe if you get divorced, don't give your ex-in-laws reason to kill you. I mean, if you're going to keep them in the luxury to which they become accustomed, maybe keep that up. I don't know. I wouldn't start it to begin with. I don't know. And if you have been lucky enough to be kept in a luxury to which you wouldn't otherwise be able to have, when someone says they're going to sell it, say, okay, deal with that. Don't kill them. The last thing I'd like to say about this case is what's very interesting in in Hong Kong, In Hong Kong, it's very densely populated and not a lot of room. And apparently, all of the murders involve dismemberment. Why? Because you can't hide bodies very easily there. So you have to cut them up, grind them up. You can't just get rid of them. Isn't that... So this case has brought up a lot about that type of... Sorry, I probably should have said trigger warning. But if you're watching true crime, I would assume you might know about this gross stuff. But it is disgusting. But the thing is, in Hong Kong, I guess it's more typical, because if you're going to do it, you commit to the crime. And that is how they get rid of bodies in Hong Kong. Crazy, right? I mean, not. Anyways. There's been, case number 3 is, I don't know why I gave that weird creepy smile, because it's not very happy. Bill and Peggy. Bill and Peggy Stephenson, their murders seem to have a connection with the Delphi case. This is very interesting. This just came up this week, that a cold case detective by the name of Detective Cox and his cold case detective Adams in Florence, Kentucky, which is actually just over the border between Ohio and then right next to Indiana, just south of Indiana and Ohio on that border. It's like a tri-border with the Ohio River being the defining difference between those states. So in 2011, Bill and Peggy had been living, they had just moved in the same city, but had moved to a condo. It was at the back of a development that you had to buzz to get in to either, I don't know if it was their actual house or if it was a gated community. It wasn't clear in the reporting. But, and this, Gisela K talked about this on, she's my source for this on the on Grizzly True Crime podcast. Highly recommend. She's my main squeeze source for this case number 3. And she did a great job of retelling this. And I would definitely go and look that up if you're interested in a deep dive. Her live streams tend to go on for a couple hours. So that's why I'm trying to compact it here for you. But if you want it with all the details, please go over to her channel on YouTube. You will be happy. So here is Bill and Peggy in happier times, and then there's a picture of them when they got married. They were very happy. They were very involved in their community. Peggy played the organ for church, and Bill, he not only was involved in his church, but Bill, I don't know if you noticed, if you've traveled around on public highways and byways in America, in the U.S., but there are these Travel America trucking stops where it usually has a place where you can go to the bathroom and get food. It's got everything that you need for being on the road. Well, Bill actually set up a ministry in the Travel America chapel. I didn't even know they had chapels, but they have showers. They have everything there. So, and he apparently was very involved in working and ministering to truckers. That wasn't his full-time job or anything. That was just something he did as his philanthropy. So his wife actually played the organ at their church that they attended, and then Bill did this philanthropy. So, why am I mentioning truckers? Apparently, in the Delphi case, they thought perhaps, and I don't know why, that perhaps it was a trucker that did this. Abby and Liberty and the Mohan High Bridge, they were stabbed with a sharp knife. That was the Snapchat murders, it's often called, where there was a video that was down the bridge that was kind of like last week I talked about Dylan Rounds perhaps using his iPhone and catching his killer in the process unknowingly. This was a case where Liberty German, I believe it was Liberty, started, she Snapchatted this man approaching her and her friend on this bridge in this isolated park, who said, girls, go down the bridge. And you can kind of hear, they think one of the girls say, is that a gun? So I don't know why they thought perhaps it could be a trucker, but that had already, so that's kind of like one thing that brings these two cases perhaps together. So on May 29th, a holiday, similar to the holiday right before Valentine's Day was the Delphi case. In the Stephenson case, they didn't show, it was Memorial Day weekend, they didn't show up for church. So they were missed right away. Somebody went to their home and they found that they had both been stabbed, but they were posed. We don't know too much about the crime scene except that this Detective Cox was saying some of the similarities was that the house, it looked like the person spent a lot of time there. It had to have been in the middle of the night. Every room had something, like it was staged, they were posed, and he felt that it was meant to frame somebody else, but that it was very specific. All right. This happened in 2011. So what is the link? So Detective Cox, he said that a tipster actually listed a series of reasons why the culprit, this is a quote, why the culprit behind the Delphi murders is the same person who did the Stephenson murders, which they're within a half day's drive from each other. So that is, the location is sort of similar. I mean, obviously not in the same town, but the tip didn't, this is what's really interesting. The tip doesn't concern Richard Allen, who is the person who's been arrested for the murders of Abby and Liberty. Now, but he's been charged, he was charged with the murders in October of last year. But that happened a month before the tip came in, but it had nothing to do with Richard Allen. So he goes on to say, however, the investigators in Delphi said they had reason to believe that Allen allegedly was not the only actor involved in the girl's death, and currently they're looking at other potential suspects. I believe we would all remember that when Allen was arrested. They said, but if you have any tips, if you were out there, they wanted more information. And remember, they had found a gun, even though the girls weren't shot, they found a gun that matched a casing that had been cycled through, not shot. The casing was found between the girls, and that similar type of gun. Are we getting Murdaugh flashbacks yet of guns cycling through, not shot? But we know this gun was similar to the gun that it had been cycled through, the same type. So they thought it was the same gun that was found at Richard Allen's house recently. We also remember that there were a number of people that were involved in luring the girls to the park, and one of the persons is in jail now for let's just say corn, children of the corn, some kid corn. I mean, a whole field of kid corn he is in jail for. And after he was supposed to go to trial for his kid corn, suddenly that's when there was a tip about Richard Allen. So that was Keegan Kline. Now, Keegan Kline, remember, had control of the Snapchat profile. Anthony Schatz, but wasn't Anthony, was talking to the girls, and that's why they went to the bridge at that time. But Keegan Kline was not there. We don't know how many other people had control over that profile. Did he sell that profile to somebody? Was it a trucker? I mean, this is all very entwined. We just know that Keegan Kline was not charged with the murders, but he did control the Facebook that lured the girls there. Not Facebook. Well, I don't know what social media it was that she was talking to him on, if it was Snapchat or if it was Facebook or if it was Instagram. But Keegan Kline was going to go, he did have a bunch of corn about kids all over. So was he selling that? Did he sell some to Richard Allen? See, we don't really know what's going on in the Delphi case. So we do know, though, that so it says declining. So he didn't. So Cox is looking for this connection, and he says it doesn't involve Richard Allen. He's declining to specify who the tipster accused of carrying out both these double murders, but the information pointed investigators toward a specific person who had a specific item that they won't tell us about, that they were interested in. Now, he won't say what that item is, and he won't tell us how it apparently links the crime. But in reviewing what happened at the Stephenson scene, they said that there were a number of things that pointed to certain family members, and in fact, one of his nephews was looked at, but it turned out that number one, he was in jail when the Delphi murders occurred for another murder, but he actually murdered somebody like he knew in a very obvious way, crime of passion. But it looked like somebody was trying to link him to his aunt and uncle's murder. So was that the posing and the staging of the crime pointed to him, but it wasn't him. Is it similar to what happened in Delphi? We don't know. So he won't say what the item is or how it links the case together. That Stephenson case, he also mentioned that they looked at Wiccans in the area, which I think is funny because Wiccan is like pagan. Wiccans talk about trees and Mother Nature. They're not Satanists. And even Satanists, like the Church of Satan, isn't really about like killing people. Like that's all misconstrued. I'm not going to get into it, but it is, they found no connection. But so something about that item, though, seemed to be like anti-religious or something. And he said he recently traveled. They did travel to northern Indiana to interview that person. And they described him as being very cooperative with the probe. But so what is that link? We don't know. What are the similarities between the Stephenson and the Delphi murders now that we look at these all together? So the similarities. There were two victims killed at the same time. A sharp weapon was used to kill both of them, both double homicides. A sharp weapon was used. Both locations were remote where there were a lack of witnesses. In both cases, the people would be missed soon, so there would be like people running, like searching to find them, find out what happened. A big like shock would be in order soon that perhaps the person could watch. Both occurred on a holiday. Both were staged. The people were posed. I believe in both they were cleaned. Some similar item was found, and they believe it's can you see over here? They believe it's a non-secular item, which means something with some religious connotation. Very interesting. And truckers were both suspected. In the Stephenson case, because a trucker at the chapel, an unknown trucker had been looking for Bill earlier, in that day and they thought maybe that person was angry and did something. He has that connection. And then in the Delphi case, I'm not sure why they thought truckers, but that was one of the things they first mentioned. So the differences. So the Stephenson case was about 3 o'clock in the morning. The girls were killed in the afternoon. The ages, very different, right? The victims, 74 for the Stephensons, and very young in the Delphi case, 13 and 14. And the Stephensons were killed inside their house, whereas the girls were killed outside but had been lured there. So, differences. We will keep up with this. I don't know if the investigator is going to say anymore. I don't know. Richard Allen he will have a bond hearing June 15th. It's going to be interesting. Going to be interesting. Do they have enough to hold him, or will he just be able to bond out? I don't know, but this doesn't help. I don't know. It doesn't. I don't know what it does. What do you think? Like and subscribe. Put it in the comments. I would love to know what you think about this. All right, case number 4. Wow. Brian Kohberger's. Now, since this is very interesting to me because we know that in Idaho there's a gag order on the participants. In fact, the gag order was increased to include witnesses and potential witnesses and their lawyers. This comes out of Pennsylvania, interestingly enough. And the FBI, if you read all the data, the reason it's coming out now, though, is because it was sealed for 60 days. And that is actually in the actual warrant. It says when it was applied for, it says it would be sealed for 60 days. So that's why this is coming out. So what did we learn? Well, so the search warrant was written on December 29th for the 30th at any time, including like 1 minute after midnight until like 11:59 the next night. That's when it said they could search. And the receipts of what were seized and arrested on when they did the things on December 30th was unsealed after 60 days. The pictures that I've included, obviously, there's our friend Brian with a Y. There's his family's house in Pennsylvania that they did the search warrant. Oh, one of the weirdest things was when they went in the house in the middle of the night, like it was like 1:30 in the morning, he was up and he was in the kitchen sorting trash into Ziploc bags with gloves on. Not the most, and people are like, what else could it mean that he was guilty? I'm like, is he a freak who's very OCD? I mean, it could mean that, but we know what it looks like. So, I also have the house, because the search was written for the house, for the person, and for the car. So we get all of that. There's a lot of little writing on here. I'm just going to sort of go through here quickly what the search warrant items for which the FBI was searching. This is what they wrote, what they were looking for. So obviously anything with blood or bodily fluids, materials, blood, bodily fluids, things on it. They were looking for knives, sheaths of knives, and any other weapons that could do injury or death, or sales receipt documenting that. So remember that. They were looking for documents, records, medications, drugs or substances, prescriptions, or otherwise. Bottles, labels, syringes, packaging, other items associated with medication, drugs, and other substances, prescriptions or otherwise, could that lead to physical violence, a physical attack, fights. So basically, drugs and drug paraphernalia. I don't know, and alcohol is a drug, so. Gonna need a drink to read all of this. It's kind of, this is what they were allowed to grab. Any property belonging to any of the victims or the other roommates, including I'm not going to read all their names because obviously we're trying to protect them from being bullied and or influenced not to testify online. Documents, records, data, connections, anything connecting to 1122 King Road in Moscow or to any of the people who lived there. Any clothing included but not limited to dark shirts, pants, masks, those with a diamond patterned sole, any DNA, footprints, fingerprints, fibers, animal or human hair or physical or trace, anything that you could get DNA from, which is, you know, most everything, suggest or any information indicating, suggesting, or related to violence, a fight, or a mode of hostility for any of the people in the house. They were also to search for 4 samples of Brian Kohberger's, it's that what they call it, buccal. There's the big word for it, which is the long word for DNA. By buccal, meaning in the mouth, swabs taken from the inside of Kohberger's mouth or whole blood samples they could get. Alcoholic beverages, or other intoxicants, any containers or receipts for the same. Data compilations. Okay, this is all the digital stuff. Anything related to data compilations aren't just digital. It also is anything suggesting violence, stabbing, fight, mode of hostility for any of the same, to include, okay, so ledgers, papers, lists, books, notes, letters, calendars, diaries, tapes, photographs, videos, and other media documentation. Or items, computer and communication devices, your phone, right? Capable of storing electronic data and other electronic storage devices and media, access to the contents of all of the above. So basically, they're going to take everything that has anything to do with anything, including, then they specify even further, all electronic devices, including all communications content. Are we getting basically everything and anything that would have to do with violence, death, crime, you get the point. All right. So what did they find? So this is written, and what is very interesting to me, and I don't think we've seen a lot before, or personally I haven't, is that if you notice, the person who wrote it, when they found something, then they draw this long line afterwards, like you do on a check, so like nobody can write anything more about it, which I find it makes me more confident, right? That's good practice. This is the FBI writing this. It was an FBI agent. So what did they find? I believe this was the stuff in the house. They just wrote knife. They didn't write what kind. A book with underlining on page 118. They found an AT&T bill for Brian Kohberger. They found a 22 gun with ammo. They found, a smaller knife. They found, I think that was a folding knife. It's hard to read the writing specifically. I think also I would recommend, if you're interested, Gisela K on Grizzly True Crime figured out this a little bit better than what I'm able to. Because as you can see, it is the person's, oops, I went on. You have to read the person's handwriting. I'm going to do this because obviously I'm squinting. Okay, so they found a folder with the vehicle, paperwork. Yeah, that was a pocket knife. An Acer, and they have to write the whole model. An Acer computer. They took a green leafy substance in a green container. I don't know what that could be. Mary Jane. It says document. We don't know what document, just a document. More green leafy substance in a plastic bag. White paper with a paper. It says white paper with, it looks like a picture, maybe. A power cable, cell phone, three 3 gloves, that same, I believe, that nitrate gloves, and a 40 caliber magazine empty. Oh, I'm sorry. They found, wow. This is everything in the house too, so it could be his parents. They found 3 Glocks and 40 caliber 3 Glock 40 caliber magazines empty. Sorry, not 3 Glocks. 3 magazines for that Glock that was number 4. His Glock 22. I don't know anything about guns. Sorry, so I don't mean to sound stupid. They just put books, black face masks. I don't know if it's the medical masks or like a ski masks. Prescription and black gloves and 1 black hat, 1 black mask. Again, unclear. These were, now here's a receipt for the items found on his person when he was arrested. So as he was standing there, he had a silver flashlight. He had 4 medical style gloves, 4. He had white Arizona jean t-shirt on, which I guess they're just taking everything that he had on. A black sweatshirt. He had on black and white size 13 Nike shoes. He had on black Under Armour socks, Under Armour black large boxer shorts, large shorts, and Under Armour black boxer shorts, and they got 1 buccal, 1 swab right then. So for the Elantra, which I found interesting, so they write down it's the Elantra. They got swabs, so they swabbed the car all over, Ziploc bags, because they saw the car go in and out, right? So the car, no matter how clean you got it, should have something. I'm sure they swabbed like deep underneath the seats. A Ziploc bag with a pink zipper, 7 to 8 plastic, 7? Oh my God. It looks like it says 7 quarters. So literally they list everything you have. A plastic baggie with green zipper. I don't know, did it have more green leafy substances in it? 36 dimes, 3 nickels, 8 pennies, gloves, receipts, insurance card, car registration, hiking boots, comfort in room, key holder, and stay information. You know, they had traveled. Remember they lost them a little bit though in Colorado, so maybe that was from Colorado. Now, tire irons, everybody's like, a shovel. Okay, the thing about the shovel though, if you want to shovel out your car, if you get stuck, it was winter, he was in Pennsylvania, he drove from Idaho through Colorado. I mean, it literally could be to shovel out. And we know he didn't bury dead bodies, but everybody's like, and a shovel in your car? I think it was probably one of those little shovels. But he did have goggles. What kind of goggles do you keep in your car? I don't think it means like driving goggles, but maybe. But goggles to me sound like, science goggles. Like when you don't go and get splatter of blood on your face. I'm just spitballing here. Floor mats. A reflective vest. Why does he have a reflective vest? Does he pretend to be a worker? I don't know. That's interesting. Used water bottles, wrench. I don't know. Maybe he has a reflective vest. Maybe that was in an emergency kit in case you have to go out and work on your car. So that maybe he's just really prepared. Door panels, seats, seat cushions, headrest, seat belt, visor. Basically, they tore that car apart. Fiber, brake pedal, gas pedal, phone charger, a Band-Aid, wipers, wrappers, maps, documents, and the seat belt boot. So they ripped the car to shreds. Okay, so that's what we found in. Very interesting. We don't know what the testing has shown, but interesting, right? I think the most interesting part, though, is that they found him at 1:30 in the morning doing weird stuff with his trash and wearing medical gloves into Ziploc bags. What? And we know that they were able to arrest him because they got his DNA out of the trash that he took to the neighbors. But you know what we don't know? We don't have the information about what else was in that trash. Why was he taking that trash? Was he taking all his trash to the neighbor's house each night? Or was that special trash? That's something I really would like to know. All right. Case 5. All right, people. Roberta Laundrie finally speaks. Not out loud. She spoke through a legal filing. And I wrote, this was her motion to CYA for the burn after reading letter. If you don't know what CYA means, cover your, and then imagine what the A stands for. Something that rhymes with grass. All right. She is providing an affidavit is anytime you speak legally. It is like you are testifying, so it is under oath. In support of a motion she wants a protective order for this letter that she wrote. And she says that she admits that she is Roberta Laundrie. She's the defendant in the above style case. And she swears and affirms that she fully understands the meaning of the terms of this affidavit. She wrote the letter requested by the plaintiff's second request for production. The Schmidt-Petito team has requested they produce this letter that they knew existed because the Petito's lawyer saw it when the FBI was explaining to them about Brian, when they found Brian's remains. Which I'm sure I have 2% wondering about Brian's remains, but I'll just get on with that. Number 4 was that I wrote the letter. This is what she's stating about the letter. I wrote the letter to my son Brian on or about May. Now think about this. May 2021. So before the trip, as they were leaving. Although I don't know the exact date I wrote the letter. I do know that I wrote it and gave it to Brian before. Remember this. Before Brian and Gabby left for Florida for New York, which was on June 2nd. And I believe they got engaged in New York. I don't know if they got engaged in Florida. But Gabby and Brian went from Florida to New York before they went out west. All right. So this is interesting. I don't know if you can see up here. Okay. So she states, the purpose of the letter was to reach out to Brian while he and I were experiencing a difficult period in our relationship, which is interesting that he just got engaged to Gabby. And why was that difficult for you, Roberta? That says there's a lot to be read between the lines. Because remember, Brian and Gabby were living in their home. So it's weird that she said she had she was having a problem with them. Brian and I had always had a very open and communicative relationship, and in the months prior to the trip, our relationship had become strained. Why? Because of the engagement? Or there is another thing that I think, which if you've watched my videos about Brian Laundrie before, is Gabby's friend Rose had said that Brian heard voices and it kept him from sleeping. He was an insomniac because the voices were keeping him up. And he is the age to have been experiencing the beginnings of schizophrenia. He was obsessed with the author that wrote Fight Club. And Fight Club is a story about a man who is schizophrenic. I am wondering if Roberta was seeing these signs. There's something else I'm wondering about, but I'll get to that in a second. So apparently, Brian and I shared they shared a love of stories and some of the language of the letter using similar phrases to describe the depth of a mother's love. Aww. Do you feel sorry for her? No, wait till she tells you what these books are. The 2 books that come to mind are, and I have pictures from them, The Runaway Buddy, and Little Bear. In addition, Gabby had given Brian a book called Burn After Writing, which contains printed questions about which the reader responds to writing their answers on a page. The back of the book instructs the reader to create a secret book and then destroy by burn after writing, which is one of those books where it's like, get out your feelings, but you don't have to tell, you know what I mean? It gets it out in a safe way. She writes that she and Gabby and Brian often joked about this book and the importance of being able to express yourself, which I find bullshit. Sorry, Roberta, I'm calling bullshit on you. It's nice and convenient that 2 of the 3 of you are dead and unable to confirm. I don't believe that write, burn, and repeat had anything to do with read and then burn the letter, because that's very different. If you were embarrassed or simply did not want anyone to know your thoughts or feelings about the book, offered a perfect resolution by telling you to burn it. So she's setting the stage that, I wanted to talk to Brian and tell him how much I loved him, and then he should burn it. So, Roberta, you were embarrassed that you loved your son so much? You were embarrassed that you would do anything for him that embarrassed you so much that you wanted him to burn it? I mean, did you say you wanted to sleep with him? I mean, if you said, I am jealous of Gabby because I want to be with you, yeah, then I could see you wanting to burn it. That would be embarrassing. You're right. But I would do whatever you needed to. I would follow you to the ends of the earth and help you no matter what trouble you get into. That's not embarrassing? And why would you want somebody to burn? That doesn't, sorry, Roberta. Okay, and then she goes on to say, in short, I was trying to connect with Brian and repair our relationship as he was planning to leave home, and I had hoped the letter would remind him how much I loved him. Okay, but burn it. I want to remind you how much I love you, but please burn this after reading it. Burn after writing is when you self-disclose like your ugliest, deepest thoughts that you really don't want anybody, but you feel like it would help to write about it. Like if you have a horrible breakup with somebody, instead of contacting them. If you have feelings about your family, you don't write to them and say burn it. No, you write it out and you don't give it to them. That's what burn after writing means. Burn after reading, sorry, Roberta. And it was just really how much you loved him and you wanted him to burn it? Bullshit. Remember those 2 books, though. Remember The Runaway Bunny and remember Little Bear. And by the way, Brian wasn't leaving home. He got engaged to his fiancée and they were going on a second trip out west. They'd already done this once. And they had been living with Roberta and her husband, Chris. They weren't, and she didn't say something that was horrific. She said how much she would always love him and find him and take care of him no matter what. Why burn that? Sure. So then she goes on to say, there were other phrases that I used in the letter that are not found in the books I shared with Brian as a child. No shit, most of these would not be found in Runaway Bunny or Little Bear. However, these phrases were common enough in our circle of friends and family to describe who you could turn to in the most troubling times of your life. That's what she's probably going to say about, I would bury a body for you. How people joke about that. She's going to try to pretend that in her circle of friends, it was a joke. Just a joke. Right, Roberta. While I used words that seem to have a connection to Brian's actions and his taking of Gabby's life, I never would have fathomed the events that unfolded months later between Brian and Gabby that would reflect the words of my letter. The words in the letter could never have been a comment on the tragic situations that were written so many months before. My words to Brian were meant to convey my love and support for my son through a light-hearted and quirky reminder that my love for him was not diminished and could not be shaken by the miles of separation we would soon be faced with. And you can't fully see it, but on the title there, I wrote that if Roberta really wrote this months aware, what it really shows is that she was fully aware that there was domestic violence and Brian had potential for deadly consequences. She ends by saying, although a few words in the letter are being quoted by others as having a connection to this case. All the words are taken together in the context of the reason the letter was written to show that there was no connection. In addition, there have been speculations that the letter was in Brian's possession or in his backpack when he died, insinuating that I gave it to him as he left my home September 13th, which you lied about and said it was the 17th at first, Roberta. So let's get that straight. And I don't believe it was the 13th either. I believe it was like as soon as he came back from Fort with you and your family, but let's not split hairs. But it is not true because the FBI had the letter in their possession and questioned members of my family about it prior to October 20th, 2021, when my husband and I found Brian's remains in the reserve. And let's just talk about how you and your husband found Brian's remains after the FBI, the state police, the local police had been looking all over. Of course, you sent them to a different area, not where Brian's car was originally found. And you sent them way later, but still, really weird that you were able to walk right into the reserve and within 20 minutes, oh, look, here's Brian. Sorry, FBI, that you couldn't find him. Roberta. Reputa, the Buta. Okay, Jay Giles fans, you'll know what I mean. So what I wrote here is that Roberta seems to think that if she gave Brian this letter as he and Gabby left for this van trip, that it exonerates her. But in reality, it shows that she was aware of the domestic violence and was worried that the worst would happen, letting Brian know that she would find him wherever he was and help him bury the body. Yeah, I don't think this helps Roberta. Reputa. Her last little thing here is that I repeat that the letter I wrote to Brian before he left with Gabby for their fateful trip was nothing more than a private communication between myself and my son, and I never expected anyone else would read it. In some way, I did not want anyone else to read it, as I knew it was not the type of letter a mother writes to her adult son, and I didn't want to embarrass Brian. Right. That is why I wrote burn after reading on the envelope, and I knew that Brian would know what that meant. I now appreciate that he actually kept it. Oh, it's enough to make you want to drink. Really. So, in my opinion, just my speculation, as when you can see on the screen, just my speculation, in my opinion, the fact that she gave this to Brian as she left, it demonstrates that Roberta, she had awareness of Brian's capacity for deadly domestic violence and concern that he needed to call Mom first, as she was the one that loved him no matter what and would even help him bury a body. Yeah, Roberta. Runaway Bunny, if you don't know. So, Runaway Bunny, that you can see up here, is about a mom who goes, no matter if you go to the highest, no matter if you were a fish in the river, I would come and I would catch you and bring you home. No matter if you climb to the tallest mountain, I would be a mountaineer and I would climb up that mountain to get you. No matter where, like, I will find you and help you no matter what, is what Runaway Bunny is about. And Little Bear can depend on Mom for anything. So the fact that what she wrote was, and I think fully aware that he had a propensity to violence, fully aware that he was developing, I think, paranoid schizophrenic tendencies and delusions, that he was dangerous. He shouldn't have gone on that trip. His mother knew, and she knew that he, after doing something violent, needed to call her. Don't forget, honey, call Mama. Oh, I will find you, just like Runaway Bunny. So she probably didn't want him going on that trip because she knew he was a loose cannon ready to go off at any minute. Right, Roberta? I'm telling you, any psychologist worth his or her salt can read through these lines. Yeah, you used words from Runaway Bunny and Little Bear, as in, you can always trust your mama, always call your mama, don't forget to call your mama, I've got your back. Even enough, and the whole, oh, our family circle knows about burying a body. Bullshit, Roberta. You were serious. Your kid was sick, I believe, personally, from what Rose said and from his behavior with Gabby. And I don't think Gabby was just a domestic violence victim. Sorry, I don't. I think Gabby Petito was a very empathetic girl who saw a boyfriend that had been kind and normal from high school, that he was acting weird. He was getting more and more paranoid. But it was during COVID, and maybe, who knows, she was giving him chance after chance. Maybe he just needed to get away from his parents. Maybe his mom was breathing down his neck. But the thing is, when people develop schizophrenia, if you're not aware of what schizophrenia is and what age can it be developed and its beginning signs, you could be like, oh, maybe he's just a little jealous. Maybe COVID is making him a little antsy. Maybe whatever. And his violent outbursts, I believe, were getting worse and worse. And I believe that's what happened in Moab. I believe his paranoia with her working and trying to get something up, he was probably thinking she's gonna leave me or something. That's why he tried to take off. His outbursts and yelling at the staff at the restaurant right before he killed Gabby at the Mary Piglet, the Mexican restaurant they went to. He went in and out yelling at the staff. And Gabby was trying to, like, she was crying. I think that was all her frustration as, what is my Brian turning into? Why is he psychotic? Well, I think Roberta knew. I think we will find out that she knew he was ill and let him go on this trip anyways. I think that's why he came home after Moab. I think they flew him back, not to do anything with the storage unit, to see a doctor and maybe get medicine that he didn't take. And maybe she didn't give him that letter as he left to go to New York and then out west. Maybe she gave him that letter when he was home after Moab. Maybe she understood his rantings and that he really shouldn't go back. And if he was going to go back, she wanted to let him know, honey, if the worst happens, don't forget. I'll come find you no matter where you are, and I will help you. Just call Mama. Bet on it. In my opinion. Just my speculation. Allegedly. All right, people. We're on to case 6. Oh, can you see behind me? It's our friends, the Vallows. All right, I have another shaker full of margarita. Mixed up. Yeah, that's right. I don't know if this is going to work. I'm probably going to make a big mess. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Oh, it works perfectly. Look at that. Bloop. All right, we're on to margarita number 2. That's right. I have my roadie all mixed up and ready to go in my Yeti to keep it cold. Oh, what can we say about Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell? They had to get their cases severed because they just had to, because of Lori's constitutional right. She wants a trial now. It was due like yesterday. And Chad he needs more time. East Idaho News gets photo credit for this. I love the rip down the center. But are they really separated? Are they? I mean, they went to the temple and were sealed for all time. And if you read the Lone Fire messages that Chad sent Lori, I think we can all agree that they're not really severed. I'm just going to make, oh, that's about the trial. I'm going to make I don't know if it's unpopular, prediction, or just from my background in psychology, I really think, I don't study abnormal psychology, but like I said, I've been into true crime forever. I think Lori and Chad are in a cult-like position. I do think they were starting the cult of the firstborn church. I do think that she thinks Chad is a prophet and she's a goddess, but she thinks that she has to protect Chad. If you watch Children, there's a YouTube channel called Children of Darkness and Light. Lori Hellis, she is a lawyer who is writing a book on this case. There's also a podcast called Mormon Stories, and they just had an episode that had an author writing another book about the Daybell case. Leah Stottle, and Lauren Matthias from Hidden True Crime, who Hidden True Crime all started, as well as Pretty Lies and Alibis. Hi, Gigi. They all started their podcast based on this Daybell case. The children were missing, and everybody was intrigued, and they followed it very closely. I like Lori Hellis's because she's a lawyer. I like Mormon Stories, especially that episode, because it explains about the Mormon faith and how Lori and Chad have twisted it like others have before. There's a interesting facet into the Mormon faith, which is about revelation, self-revelation, and they don't really everybody doesn't call it multiple probations, but the idea that there's a life after life, which kind of speaks to probate, and they talk about probation. So I'm not a Mormon expert, I'm not a religious expert, and I'm not a cult expert, and I'm not a lawyer. Those are the things I'm not. I am a psychologist, and I really do think that they had a shared delusion based in religious mania, that they were magical. In fact, Lori's lawyers said they want to get rid of the death penalty, which, good luck. So does everybody. I personally would like to get rid of it too, because I think life in prison is much more punishable than letting somebody out of everything by killing them, even if it's killing them horribly. But they say, we don't burn witches anymore. And I wanted to say, so does Lori think she's a magical goddess? Does she think she's a witch? Because she can do magic? Because, girl, of all the people I know who claim to be a witch, you aren't one of them. And quit giving witches bad names, Lori Daybell. You're just a crazy bee, in my opinion, allegedly. So, I think Lori believes and was told by Mark Mean. Now, remember Mark Means way back when in 2020 something, who before Lori was charged with murdering her children and Tammy Daybell, and before Lori then immediately after that charge went crazy. Mark Means represented both, and that's why he wasn't representing Lori after a while. His bias, he had a conflict of interest. He had represented Chad and Lori together, and if you go back to before they were arrested, you remember Lori was in jail because she went and produced her children, and Chad had called her a lot in jail, and he said when the FBI were out looking at his property, finding the children buried in his property, that Lori should call Mark Means, that he had been talking to Mark Means, and that Lori would be talking to him, and that, Mark Means was both their lawyers. I wonder if Mark Means isn't one of the members of the Church of the Firstborn. Does he think Lori's a goddess and Chad is the prophet? I don't know. I wonder, though. That is my supposition, speculation, just my opinion. There's no evidence for that. But I wonder, because if so, to protect the prophet, did he say, and she's a goddess, or, you must stick to asking for a speedy trial. Get a speedy trial. Get a speedy trial. How does that help Chad? Well, as Lori Hellis and other lawyers have explained, if Lori goes first, or whoever goes first in the two conspirators, they get to see what the defense's strategy is. And we have seen John Pryor, number one, constantly ask for severance and constantly ask for a bill of particulars. And the defense have said, we have given them everything. They don't need to know exactly. A bill of particulars is breaking down the charges to a point where you can see the strategy, basically, of the prosecution. And Now, if as Lori is going to go first, apparently April 3rd, we're getting ready for it. Chad now, he can sit back. Now, he wasn't declared incompetent. He gave up his right to a speedy trial right away. He's had over 3 years now, and John Pryor still can't get it together. And there was just new evidence. Yeah, but you've never said you had it together, John Pryor. Never. You always wanted more time. You always wanted to go second. You wanted severance and to go second for the obvious reason. You want to see what the state has. And you're going to find out. And I don't think it's going to help you anyways. Because, I kind of believe in a higher power. I don't believe in any specific book. I mean, I think a lot of the books have good ways to live your life. But I do know there is karma. And we're getting to the next case. It will catch up with you. There's energy. And if you put out shit, you get back. It comes thrown back at you in a very interesting way, I think, personally. Again, in my opinion. Don't sue me. So, yeah, Lori's going to go first. And Chad will go second. And Chad will still go down because they did this. In my opinion. That's just my opinion. So, but why would Lori be willing to do this? Because she believes in Chad. She is full-on cult member. And I believe she thinks this would help her profit. Personally. And Lori Hellis doesn't say all that. Let me just be straight about this. Lori Hellis is a lawyer. She has the podcast Children of Darkness and Light. And she has said from the beginning, it seems like Mark Means or somebody imparted to Lori that you should always ask, don't ever give up your speedy trial rights. And I think she took that to heart, but I think the reason she isn't, this is complete supposition and speculation, that Mark Means told her because it will help Chad. All right. So Lori's going to trial April 3rd. Let's drink to, let's get this party started, right? But the party, it's not a public party. It's a very exclusive party. I talked about it in the Idaho case before. In this case, and I gave you guys examples of how laws are made locally and state, and then it's called home rule. As long as nothing is violated, the city, municipality gets to make rules, then the county, then the state, and then so forth and so forth, and in more circles going out, as long as it's not violated by the big ones. And the fights we have at the Supreme Court are, did something violate what is the law of the actual land of the United States? So I think Idaho is making cases for there not to be pre-trial, or even in Idaho it seems like during trial, not advertisement, but what do you want to call it? Like, so that the media can't get involved and somehow, I understand pre-trial, and I would say in Idaho and in other states, we're going to go towards a way, I think, the Murdaugh case as well will be an example of this, and way back in the Sam Shepard case, that when there's so much pre-trial bias about this person's guilty, this person's guilty, this person's guilty, they can't get a fair trial. And even if you get somebody in as a juror who says they can be unbiased, it's really hard to forget stuff that has been in the media and in the zeitgeist of what is true. I mean, they can say, oh, but I can be whatever, but you can't really. You can't unhear, the bell cannot be untold. You can't unhear a bell from ringing. You can't pretend that it didn't happen. You really can't. Cognitively, we know this, but legally, they're like, but you can say that, and then, okay, you're a fair witness. I think to keep juries pure, they're going to have to, like, as soon as somebody's arrested, it's going to have to be like nobody can talk about anything. And the media hates that, but they're causing it. It's a weird, like, reverse psychology, symbiotic relationship. Like, the more that they try to get something, the more it's going to end up where they get zero. And that would be really hard for all of us to talk about what's going on. But the fact is, then we only get what's in court filings, which is vetted to be as true as possible. Even though, as Emily D. Baker would say, a lot of, like when indictments and when people first have lawsuits, the first thing they write, it's shade and accusation. But at least it has to be written under the guise of and I sign this saying that this is the truth as far as I know it. It's not like media that can say stuff and go, oh, well, we had a source. We had a source that said, and we know. Speaking of the Kohberger stuff, the whole thing about Ann Taylor representing Zaina Kernodle's mom, yeah, that came out. They vetted that in court, and she had technically been assigned. She never met Xana's mom. She didn't represent her physically. That was all a lie perpetrated by the media. And they'll say well, we never said. We only thought. I mean, she was technically representing her. Yeah, but you did. You knew what you were doing. You know who I'm talking to. Ashley Bamford. You know what you're doing. It's kind of really sad. So let's get back to the trial at hand. So for the Vallow trial, this is from quoted from Nate Eaton at the East Idaho News, that the public, they can attend the trial in person at the Ada County Courthouse. There's going to be an overflow room set up for additional seating, but Boyce is prohibiting media cameras, live video broadcasts, and live audio feed will not be allowed. Now, I don't know if they'll have an audio feed and then release it afterwards, not at the time, but later. All spectators in Madison. So this crime was committed in Rexburg, Idaho, which I believe is in Fremont or Madison counties in Idaho. But all spectators in Madison and Idaho counties will have to follow the courtroom order, including the following points. I think Madison, it was in, Rexburg is in Fremont County, but I believe the bigger courthouse is in Madison, and then Ada is in Boise, which the trial is going to take place. So from now on, in both Madison and Ada counties, everyone will be screened through security, handbags, backpacks, all other items, subject to reason. Oh, I think maybe there will be a overflow in Madison, and that's why it says that. I'll check for you guys. Everyone will be screened. Okay, cell phones must be off or in silent mode. They cannot record, photograph, or transmit, so nobody will be tweeting sounds, images, or videos from the courtroom. Seating is provided on a first-come basis through an online reservation system. Reservations can be made a day before. Attendees may not wear buttons, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what that means is that each day before the next day, I believe it means you're going to have to make a sign up for a reservation. Basically, this just keeps the public access way down. I don't know, psychologically, what Judge Boyce is doing is actually going to backfire. It's going to cause more interest. What is he trying to hide? He should just allow, the answer should have been absolutely zero cameras and recordings pre-trial. Trial should have been, we will record it, a pool camera, and not just on Lori, on the whole room, and it would be released after that day so they could vet any weird stuff that happened. But let me just tell you, instead, this weirdness is going to make people even more interested, and the media is going to be ravenous. It's going to have reverse effect, Judge Boyce. So if you really didn't want too much, unfortunately for Judge Boyce, this is what it is. It is what it is. Now, we're going to get to the Murdaugh trial. There's lots of ways not to let it become a circus. I think by April, It's going to be insane. Getting in there will be insane. They're going to want people to talk. They're going to try to, it's going to be insane. All right, so we have case 7 next. And as you can see up here, here's our friend Alec Murdaugh. All right. Are we surprised that it took less than 3 hours to come back with a guilty verdict? No. Are we surprised that into like a day, I think they had 1 day in between, and then Judge Newman, 2 life sentences. Are we surprised? No. Alec was allowed to speak, and he said he is innocent. I personally don't see how he did these crimes with 2. I don't believe the 2 different guns and his rolling around and his, because like I said, the guy who did the on the side of the road, the lazy Nepo baby, did not commit the perfect crime within 2 hours. I mean, Sled did a shit investigate. Everybody's like, Sled is so great, and Creighton Waters. No, Creighton, and you know this, Creighton. You lucked out getting Judge Newman. You lucked out. You lucked out like getting a judge who would let, basically, all that propensity evidence, he's a shit person. Oh, and by the way, let's try the financial crimes at the same time. And he's like, well, I did all that. He's giving all these interviews about Creighton. Creighton. Boy. You're from South Cackalack. You know the deal. Low country justice was had. The same justice that Alec Murdaugh got all his money from by running Hampton County. Yeah, worm turned. And when that worm turned, karma said, you're my bitch now. And Alec went down. But was it fair? Was it a good trial? And did Creighton Waters just get such a great prosecution? No. No. Sled didn't even look at Alameda where Alex said he was. They didn't check all there. They didn't check the drains. They didn't check the smokehouse. They didn't check shit. They never found the weapons. Creighton just, I mean, no offense. Creighton, you lucked out getting a friendly jury and a friendly judge who let in all that evidence. And the one kid who's like 22, number one, he graduated from somewhere in Charleston. Or did he graduate from Clemson? I think he graduated from Clemson. Anyway, no, he said he was in Charleston, though. Anyways, there was one kid who I heard the whole thing about, oh, and I'm like, are you pre-law? The kid sounded like pre-law. Why was he able to sit for that many weeks? He graduated when? I don't know, man. I don't know. The whole thing sounded like, with all that propensity evidence, the 404, I think it's B, his crimes from before, and they let in everything. They had no evidence of the murder, but they had tons of evidence that Alec is a liar. And the fact, here's the thing about all that other stuff about Idaho. Excuse me, well, which Idaho case, right? In the Vallow-Daybell case, well, and the Brian Kohberger case. When we were talking about it around my Sunday dinner table, and my mom was saying, yeah, but he was going to get divorced from his wife. And I believe she also said, and there's blood splatter on his shirt. Everybody remembers what was on all the Mandy Matney podcast and the HBO and the 48 Hours stuff. And that was like in their head as, well, maybe they didn't mention it in the court, but yeah, we really know Maggie was asking for a divorce. And I was like, no, that wasn't an evidence. That's why the only person I could stand to listen to was Peter Tragos on The Lawyer You Know. He was as fair as anybody could be. And he called it. The minute they let in all that evidence about the financial crimes and basically had a financial crimes hearing, that's what nailed the coffin. He said he's guilty. They're going to say he's guilty. And for the same reason that on Sunday dinner, my mom said, yeah, but he lies about everything. That is why that's why the evidence is typically not let in. And he was going to jail forever anyways. So when we look back and think of Mandy Matney keeps saying, and Eric Bland on their podcast, The Cup of Justice, and they're like, Yeah, we're taking down the low country good old boys network. Honey, I can tell you weren't really from the low country. Neither you nor Eric Bland. You're not taking apart. You are not taking apart the Good Old Boys Club. The Good Old Boys Club kicked out Alec. That's what happened. And if you don't believe me, watch the latest retrospective. I think it was, I don't know if it was the Netflix or the HBO, but now everybody suddenly knows everything and hates Paul and Maggie and like Paul. It's a whole different story than it was prior to this. And Alec, they all knew Alec was bad and blah, blah, blah. And I am just telling you, Alec Murdaugh and all the Murdaughs are poisoned now in Hampton, South Carolina. But it's just because the Good Old Boy Network kicked him out of the club. We didn't get everybody else. And whoever really did, which I think there's more evidence, there was 2 shooters. And Alec's brother Randy came out and said, I don't think he's telling the truth. Yeah, Randy, neither do I. I think he's not telling you about the organized crime aspect and the fact that if he did, they'd go after Buster next. And he's in jail forever. He was in jail forever for the financial crimes. And personally, I always felt that he was going to tell about the financial crimes and flip on everybody to get a sweet deal to get out of that. And then his family was killed, to send him a message that he was not out of it. And then he just wanted everybody to know it wasn't him. And he did that lame sort of sled, keep looking for the killers because see they're shooting at me, like that bullshit. The side of the road was so screwed up. That was because Alec can't commit a crime without screwing up. There's no way he did, Moselle. But does it matter? Basically, it's karma. Live by the sword, die by the sword. Live by Hampton County Good Old Boys Network. You know, get involved in all that and you're going to go down for the same reason. So I hope we find out what happens one day. Does he deserve this? I don't know. He's going to be in jail forever anyways. I don't think he did it. But did he cause it by his actions? You know, getting involved in drug running, getting involved in organized crime, and then starting to move money around to the point where you're stealing from Peter to pay Paul. He's guilty of that. And he's going to pay. He's got a life sentence anyways because his baby's gone and his wife's gone. And they weren't the best people maybe. But this... I'm just saying, if these people like Creighton Waters, who got a sweet deal in Hampton County just as much as Alex used to because they let in all that stuff for an easy conviction, he's not a great prosecutor. Sorry, Creighton. I mean, I'm sure you're fine. And I'm usually rooting for the white hats. I'm a law and order type person, and Mandy and Eric, I know you're for the good people, and I loved Mandy Mantney's Murdaugh murders, but she reported on that white shirt having splatter on it, and that was a lie. And he got indicted because of that evidence. And then the guy just gets on the thing and goes, "Yeah, I was wrong about that, though. We didn't really find any. I mean, I know we told the grand jury there was blood on his shirt, but there wasn't. Right there, it should have been thrown out. And the fact that Judge Newman's son died during the trial, yeah, he hated Alec because Alec he thought, well, if you killed your son, I hate you. There's too much bias, cognitive bias, bullshit, whatever. I'm just saying, if you live in the low country, stay away from politics, stay away from drugs, stay away from criminal organizations, because the cowboys will get you. They're not just out west. All right, so this is the end. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I would appreciate it. I'll be back next week. I have a small crime bite coming up on the Nicola Bully case. I can't let it go. I don't know about you, but there is some weird stuff going on. And I will see you next week. Bye.